my teen romantic comedy, or shall we call it Oregairu, is composed of 3 seasons, and it's not your typical rom-com anime, as it is more of what to expect in your school life. Most of you who have already seen this anime know that Hachiman Hikigaya, being a loner with no friends, tries to deal with his indifferences and existential point of view in life. People can slightly relate to these kinds of scenarios, as it is very common to students. Hikigaya's journey is a long one, as he struggles to be socially active. Now let's try to recap what happened in the first season of Oregairu. The anime begins with a loner named Hachiman Hikigaya narrating an article he wrote explaining his thoughts on the lives of current teenagers, which annoys his language teacher Shizuka Hiratsuka. As a punishment, she orders Hikigaya to join the Sogu High School Service Club or Volunteer Club, depending on the English translation, and insists that its president Yukino Yokinoshita, that's a tongue twister, help Hikigaya with his social skills. This instantly sparks a disagreement between the two students regarding with how to socialize, especially with women, and Shizuka suggests that they challenge their principles by assisting people in joining the club. The following day, Hikigaya discovers that Yukino was oddly viewed as an outsider inside her class due to her beauty, which relates to her unique style of thinking. Yui Gihama then asks the service club to assist her in preparing cookies for her friend, but Yukino fails to teach her the fundamentals of cooking. Hikigaya takes a different approach, using psychology to persuade Yui that the act of doing something for another person is more important than the outcome. The following week, Yukino and Hikigaya examine Yui's request in terms of the goal of personal progress versus the advantages of working toward that goal, despite the possibility of failure. Yui later arrives at the club and presents Hikigaya and Yukino with handmade cookies she cooked herself. The episode starts off again with Hikigaya narrating his view in life again. Shizuka once again criticizes Hikigaya for basing his biology report on his disapproval with the hierarchy established by social organizations. Later that day, Yumiko Miura presses Yui for an explanation why she tries to leave their group to have lunch with Yukino. Hikigaya was about to help since he was irritated, but he was terrified by Yumiko's expression and decided to return to his seat. Yukino suddenly arrives and demands an explanation for Yui's tardiness, but she eventually forgives her. Yumiko, on the other hand, has an outburst when Yui focuses her attention on Yukino, forcing the latter to criticize Yumiko for her self-centeredness. The tense atmosphere then drives the other students away, and Yui takes the chance to explain how meeting Hikigaya and Yukino made her realize that she can be her own person, and not push herself to do what others want her to do, which Yumiko accepts. The next afternoon, a kid named Yoshiteru Zaimokuza arrives at the service club suffering from 8th grader syndrome. After the group talks about his demeanor, Yoshiteru requests that they help him examine a light novel he created. Hikigaya and Yukino then stay up all night, reading his novel and deliver their opinions the next day, which are less than positive. Despite the service club's severe honesty, Yoshiteru honestly accepts their views and agrees to have them assess his next literary endeavor. After Hiki's narrative on life again, Yui interrupts him while having lunch outside at his favorite area and informs him about her friendship with Yukino. During the following gym class, Saita Totsuka practices tennis with Hikigaya before inviting him to join the tennis club. Hikigaya then asks Yukino for her thoughts on the offer at the next service club meeting. However, Saika arrives and requests that they assist him in practicing tennis for the following few days. Yumiko and her group demanded to use the tennis court during lunchtime practice, even though Saika has authorization to do so. Thankfully, Hayato Hayama steps in with a recommendation to play a doubles match, with the winner gaining exclusive access to the court. The match then begins with Hikigaya and Yui versus Hayato and Yumiko, until Yui strains her ankle and changes to Yukino, who is ready to beat Yumiko for being prideful. After some banter with Yumiko, Yukino dominates the match until her stamina runs out, at which point she hands over control to Hikigaya. Hikigaya then wins the game with his final 2 serves. using his understanding of the sea breezes to hit the ball in a high arc. The spectators eventually ignore the service club victory after Hayato prevents Yumiko from hurting herself on the final serve. The episode ends with Hikigaya accidentally entering the club room while Yukino and Yui were changing clothes. While on their way to school, Hikigaya and his sister Komachi Hikigaya conversed about the car accident he was involved in on his first day of high school. Shizuka then scolds Hikigaya for his future career decision and tells him to form a 3-person group for the workplace field trip. Later, the service club receives a suspicious shared text message. Hayato then begs that the service club stop spreading that message that exposes the vulgar deeds of Kakeru, Yamato, and Oka as a delinquent. The service club then connects the message to the field trip, deducing that one of the 3 intends to eliminate another so they can create a group with Hayato. Hikigaya and Yui then take turns acquiring information, but Yui fails badly due to her inability to be subtle. Afterwards, Hikigaya proceeds to observe Hayato's group until Saika interrupts him. When Hayato joins in on the conversation, he solves the mystery. Hikigaya subsequently explains Kakeru, Yamato, and Oka's cohesive friendship and has Hayato leave their group to allow them to bond. Hayato then expresses gratitude to Hikigaya for gathering him and Saika for the field trip. Shizuka scolds Hikigaya for showing up late, nearing the end of after-school classes. He then visits a local cafe and meets Yui, Yukino, and Saika, who are joined by Komachi and her friend Taishi Kawasaki. Taishi expresses concern about his sister Saki Kawasaki's and her getting out late in the evening, and their service club resolves to investigate the situation. The following day, the club employs different plans to approach Saki, of which the majority fail. With Komachi's assistance, the service club discovers that Saki works evenings at a cafe and eventually tracks her down to a bar at the top of a high-end hotel in Chiba. The service club then appears in formal attire and attempts to press Saki for information. And as tensions grow between Saki and Yukino, the group departs. Saki then meets with the group the next morning, and they discover that she has been saving up money for college. However, Komachi does point out that she shouldn't have worried Taishi, and Hikigaya suggests that she should apply for a scholarship instead. Komachi then surprises Hikigaya by revealing that Yui was the owner of the dog he had rescued in a vehicle accident long ago. Hikigaya continues to push Yui away due to his past experiences and hates getting involved with relationships. After her prior experience with Hikigaya, Yui stops attending service club meetings, and Shizuka assigns them the responsibility of recruiting a new 3rd member. Yukino recommends letting Yui rejoin the club by celebrating her birthday. Later that weekend, they went to the mall to shop for Yui, and both eventually decide to buy some trendy accessories for Yui. But they kinda stumble across Yukino's older sister, Haruno Yokinoshita, who playfully taunts them with her transparent persona. Yui unexpectedly, and in quotations, stumbles upon the two, and Yukino invites her to the next service club. At the next meeting, Yukino informs Yui that they want to celebrate her birthday and thank her for everything she has done for the club. Hikigaya also takes the chance to clear up everything with Yui, explaining that she owes him nothing and should not pity him. Yui claims she never thought of herself as pitying him, but due to this issue, it kinda left her speechless. Ultimately, Yukino bridges the gap between them by truly expressing that they should forget about the past and focus on the present to help them in the future. Then Yui playfully consults Hikigaya on how the accessory looks on her. As Hikigaya tries to unwind during the summer holiday and ignore Shizuka's backlog of texts about service club activities, Shizuka eventually manages to get Hikigaya out and takes the service club and other Sobu High students to a prefectural park in Chiba, there to supervise an elementary school summer camp for a few days. During the event, Hikigaya and Yukino observe the young Rumi Tsurumi's deliberate shunning by her friends, as well as Hayato's several fruitless attempts to try and fix the issue. Rumi senses a similar aura from Hikigaya and Yukino and confides in them about her dilemma. Yukino added that it would only worsen once she starts middle school with the same people. The Sobo group later tries to think of ways to help Rumi that evening. However, tensions rise when Yukino rejects Yumiko's plan due to her overall lack of experience interacting with people like Rumi. Unable to sleep that night, Hikigaya seeks Yukino in the woods and explains her wish to aid Rumi. This is because he sees a reflection of Yui in her, as well as some of her history with Hayato before going to bed. Rumi, who is also unable to sleep, sits by a stream under the stars. The summer camp continues, and Shizuka asks the Sobo group to plan a test of courage and a bonfire for the evening. After some preparations, the Sobo girls relax to a nearby river, and Rumi joins Hikigaya on the bank, where he discusses the decreasing likelihood of maintaining elementary school bonds as one grows older. Rumi, on the other hand, notes that she has already given up on making friends, because she had previously reciprocated her peers' present treatment. To help Rumi, Hikigaya suggests that the Sobo group should create a source conflict inside the peer that rejects Rumi. This would show their genuine self-allegiance and eventually dissolve their relationships, shifting the spotlight away from Rumi. The plan seems to work as they carry it out during the test of courage, but Rumi saves the girls in a dramatic turn of events. Afterwards, during the bonfire celebration, the Sobo group observes that Hikigaya's plan had created the stage for the girls to split apart after betraying each other, hence improving Rumi's relationship with the other children. Despite the turn of events, after Rumi saved them from the conflict, their plan turned out successful. Afterwards, they enjoy their last night of camping through a bonfire party. The camp ends the following day, and when Haruno arrives to fetch Yukino up, Yui and Hikigaya recognizes the Yukinoshita limousine as the very vehicle that almost hit the dog. Yui invites Hikigaya and Komachi to the annual summer fireworks celebration as a way of saying thanks for looking out for her dog, but Komachi declines to allow Hikigaya and Yui to give them both a chance to go together. On the day of the festival, Hikigaya and Yui try to make up for the awkwardness by shopping with Komachi. Then both went into different food stalls to grab a bite and enjoy the event even just for a bit. As the fireworks were about to begin, both ran into Haruno while looking for a spot to watch the fireworks display. Haruno takes this opportunity for a chance to explain a little about her connection with Yukino, and she regrets Yukino's difficulty in building meaningful relationships with others. By the end of the festival, Haruno mistakenly refers to Yukino's involvement in the accident, but Hikigaya dismisses it as minor details. Afterwards, Hikigaya takes Yui home, and she explains that she would rather Hikigaya, Yukino, and herself not keep their feelings bottled up. And she also explains that she regrets befriending Hikigaya if not for the accident, which in reply, he rejects based on causal reasoning. School resumes the following week, and Hikigaya starts to hate himself on the assumption that Yukino was incapable of lying, because back in the first episode, she said she didn't know who he was. Shizuka nominates Hikigaya as the male representative of Section 2F for the Cultural Festival Committee, while Hayama later nominates Minami Sagami as the female representative, who then volunteers to be the committee chair to enhance her own development. Minami then asks Yukino to assist her with her vice presidential chairing task. In terms of festival management, Yukino outperforms Minami. Meanwhile, Hina Ebina directs a theatrical production, and Haruno applies for a musical performance. Minami then advises that the committee enjoy themselves while preparing for the event, but Yukino insists that the logistical work comes first. However, more than half of the committee follow Minami's suggestion, leaving the other members with an uphill struggle with the paperwork. The next day, Yukino efficiently handles most of the work, but when Hayato criticizes her for it, Hikigaya shifts the focus away from Yukino by blaming the deserting members. After that, Minami delegated most of her responsibilities to Yukino before returning to help the other classes. Overwhelmed with paperwork, Yukino takes most of it home and fails to show up at school the following day. Hikigaya notices Yukino didn't show up to school and decides to phone Yui asking if she'd seen her, only to discover that she's exhausted herself by taking up most of the responsibilities for the festival work. Yui scolds her for not relying on them more than she should, and Hikigaya underlines her point by adding that in a perfect world, people rely on one another, but even then, he is unsure if it is the best course of action. The following day, the festival committee attempts to generate festival slogans that all convey a spirit of camaraderie. Hikigaya brilliantly proposes a slogan utilizing the kanji for quote-unquote people, or hito, to highlight the unjust division of work created by Minami on the committee. The Sobu High School Cultural Festival occurs sometime later, but because of stage fright, Minami stumbles on her introductory speech. Regardless, the rest of the festival is a big success, particularly Hina's yaoi stage play. Hikigaya eventually takes a break and Yui joins him for lunch, explaining that she decided to wait for Yukino to open up to her while attempting to deepen her friendship with Hikigaya. Minami locks herself in the bathroom after feeling embarrassed. Sobu High's cultural festival continues, and Hikigaya is stuck carrying out his committee member duties by filming the day's activities. Komachi arrives and is startled to see her brother really taking some responsibility. As the event near its end, Haruno entertains the crowd with a full orchestra performance. As the final ceremony approaches, the group faces an issue. Minami, being the person in charge for the closing statement, is nowhere to be found, as Meguri reports. The majority of the group decided to wait while Hikigaya searches the campus for her. Hikigaya soon finds Minami on the laboratory roof and understands she's upset, because Yukino snatched the attention away from her, despite her request for assistance. Hayato and Minami's group arrive there to fetch her, but she refuses to move. Seeing no other option, Hikigaya effectively employs reverse psychology, paired with Minami's genuine social reality to shame her into accepting her role, especially using a tone that infuriates Hayato. The festival concludes with Yui, Yukino, Haruno, and Shizuka giving an additional musical performance, followed by Minami's closing statement. Everyone had mixed feelings about Hikigaya's course of action, but Shizuka praises him for finding solutions, but laments that he's done it in a way that is self-sabotaging. Later that evening, in the service club room, Hikigaya and Yukino discusses how well they've gotten to know each other, with Yukino implying that they've become friends. Yui ultimately arrives at the club and invites them to an after-party organized by Hayato to celebrate the festival's success. Hikigaya concludes by reflecting that, while there are no second chances in life, his and Yukino's views on society may continue to be regarded as deviant. Sobo High School has its annual athletic festival, and Hikigaya tries to justify his disinterest in participating by reinterpreting a Pierre de Coubertin lecture. Meguri, Shiro Meguri, had previously requested assistance from the service club in arranging her school's final athletic event. The service club agrees, and Meguri has them brainstorm event ideas, in which Shizuka rejects because of their social sensitivity. Hikigaya decides to enlist Yoshiteru and Hina's inventiveness, and they quickly begin preparations. When the festival began, the white team pushes ahead of the red team, but the tables shift when Yukino and the red team females won a historically significant event. Hikigaya then competes in the male pole drop event, cleverly using Yoshiteru as a diversion while he disguises himself as a white player and closes in on the pole. When Hayato and his group intercepted him, Hikigaya discloses his covert method of distracting Hayato so Yoshiteru may change at the pole, thus winning the event and the festival for the red side. Later, after the event, the service club discusses Hikigaya's underhanded tactics, which led to the red team's disqualification. Setting the issue aside, they decided to give it their all in the next athletics festival. The season ends with Hikigai's perception slowly changing as he embraces a bit of the bonds formed within the club, and the people he met along the way. Hikigaya is a relatable character that views life from a realist perspective. Despite him being pessimistic, though it has some intriguing points that make you think that he might be right. The value of trusting others is a big step, but he still has a long way to go to fully accept society and the people around him. This anime is a must-watch, as its dialogues are sometimes complex but fun to read most of the time. So don't miss out on this anime and hope to see you in the next recap.